Awesome. All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour, but we'll just let folks a few moments to trickle in here, and we'll get started shortly on today's topic, which is about the compass within using core values to guide recognition and culture. We'll do a quick icebreaker in the chat. Let us know where are you dialing in from, and just to relate to today's topic, what are some of your personal core values? See, Dana, hello from Long Beach. We'll let folks let us know. Jason, I'll put you on the spot first. Tell us a bit about where you're dialing in from and what are some of your personal core values.
So myself, I'm dialing in from Vancouver, British Columbia, and we have a beautiful day outside, which is a treat in mid November. And then my personal core values are courage, raise people up, integrity, and to be present to the beauty around me. So yeah, and I see a bunch of other cool responses kind of flowing into the chat box as well.
Yeah, I see assuming positive intent.
I like that one.
Mhm. Be better year over year. Integrity, kindness, integrity, presence.
All right, we're
Robert,
going
I
to
know you'll be
tackle
speaking.
integrity, Jason, today. We're going to talk about why I don't think that's a core value. It'll be a good discussion.
I love it. Yeah. No, you know what's funny? I've actually had people challenge me on my values in the past, and I'm like, no, I'm not changing them. But I'm looking forward to hearing
It's
your
not that
thoughts.
you don't believe in integrity. That is, yeah, that it just leaves some ambiguity.
Oh, I love this.
Kindness, loyalty, respect,
Yeah.
teamwork. I know, Robert, we'll get into yours later in the presentation, but is there like a teaser you want to share here? Maybe that where you're dialing in from.
I'll share my dominant one is to find a better way and share it. And another one that's always been pretty strong for me is self-reliance.
Nice.
Natick, Mass. That's like 2 towns over from me. My wife grew up there.
Finding neighbors here. I love it. Awesome. And so thank you everyone for sharing. Feel free to continue as we pop down into the fireside here. I just wanted to share a quick little link here. If you're interested in diving more into your own personal core values, Robert here, their team has put together a quick little core values quiz. And so you can see where you fall on the quadrant for clarity and alignment. It was really fun. I did it yesterday. And so, yeah, check it out if you're interested. Awesome. We will get started with some housekeeping items. So, first of all, if we haven't met yet, hello, my name is Rebecca. I'm the community manager here at Bucketlist, and I'll be your host for today's session. Second housekeeping item, we do have the chat box open. If you're wanting to send a comment to everyone in this chat, make sure the drop down is set to everyone. Otherwise, it'll just be the three of us who can see it. Q&A box is open. Please feel free to put all your questions in there so we can address them at the end and they don't get lost in the chat. The credits, professional development credits, will be shared at the end of today's session. We'll get HRCI, SHRM, and CPD. Last but not least, we are recording today's session and the recording will be sent out over email after the event. Now, take a quick moment to set the stage for the conversation today. So, the topic is about core values, recognition, and leading with them. And we really want to focus on how the core values should be guiding culture and recognition. And as we close out this year, many of us are thinking about what it takes to truly drive engagement, retention, and performance. Core values and meaningful recognition have really become essential for employees to have clarity, belonging, and purpose at work. And so today we are joined by a very special guest, Robert Glazer, whose book, The Compass Within, explores the power of living and leading through core values. Before we dive into the introductions, we wanted to hear a bit more about you in the audience today and what your thoughts are on core values. So I'm going to launch a poll here. Awesome. And we would just love to hear more from you about your personal core values and how closely they align with how it influences the way you lead others. And then from an organization perspective, what best describes your organization's relationship with the company core values. And as y'all do that, Jason, I'll pass it off to you as today's interviewer and conversation host. You feel free to introduce yourself a little bit, who you are, what you do, your passion around core values, and I'll also let you introduce Robert.
Yeah, thanks so much, Becca. My name is Jason Lindstrom. I am the CEO over at Bucketlist Rewards. We are a leading enterprise rewards and recognition platform. And this topic is very near and dear to my heart for two reasons. On the professional side, we often help companies bring their core values alive on a day-to-day basis, and that helps to lift employee engagement and lower turnover. And then personally, uh, I see the power in having well-defined personal core values and using those to guide you through life. And when I found out that Bob had written a book on this, I think it's such an exciting opportunity for everybody in the audience to learn more about this topic from somebody who really walks the talk. And I'm going to take a few moments to introduce Bob, who I consider a friend, colleague, and advisor to our business. Bob is the founder and chairman of Acceleration Partners. They're a global leader in partnership marketing. He's also a serial entrepreneur and an award-winning executive. Um, Under his leadership, his organization, Acceleration Partners, received numerous accolades, including Entrepreneur's Top Company Culture, Inc.'s Best Place to Work, Fortune's Best Small and Medium Workplaces, and here's a really interesting one. This was new to me. Robert himself was twice named to Glassdoor's list of top CEOs for small and medium companies in the US, ranking number two. And that's like the real deal. I know there's a lot of people out there who pay close attention to Glassdoor, and you receive a top ranking there. Bob is amazing. You're also a number one Wall Street Journal author. You've authored seven books. I've read a bunch of them. They're awesome, and I'm so excited to dig into today's book specifically. So, Bob, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm just really looking forward to having everybody who's joined this webinar to learn from you and to hear some of your insights.
Yeah, we both love this topic, so I'm excited to dive into it and to add some color. And I hope by the end of this, all of you who have one word core values will go back and rethink those. So we'll talk about that.
Amazing, amazing. And we got a bunch of results from these community polls. I don't know if you see those on screen, Bob or Becca. Do you
I
want to?
did a second ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll kind of speak to those at a high level. So the first question, how closely do your personal core values influence the way you lead others? It looks like the majority of the people on the call, just a little bit under 80% said very closely. So their core values guide their decision making. Um, and then what best describes your core organization's relationship with a company core values? This this one's much smaller. So it looks like around 40% of people on
Okay.
today's call say the company core values guide the decisions. And then a big chunk, around 44%, say the values are present, but they're not consistently used. And Bob, I'd love to get your take on this. And then lastly, there's some people are refreshing them, or some people need to strengthen them.
They
Any
guide most decisions is actually higher than I would sense. There's some bias from who's answering this because generally the vast majority of company values that I've seen are not much more than decorative wall art. In fact, someone forwarded me, like, it could have been any company, a newsletter this morning, and they said, "What do you think of this?" And it said basically, hey, we just did our vision and our values, and they spelled out the values as partner, and they were all one word. I was like, literally, you could apply this to any company. Like, I could take this email. There's nothing about people really fall in love with their acronym core values. And the problem is I've interviewed the employees at a lot of companies, and they know what the acronym is, but they don't actually know what the underlying values are.
No, I think that's a great first impression. And I too, having worked with a lot of organizations, see organizations where you'll talk to heads of culture and like they'll know one of the values, one of four values, or maybe two of four values. But a lot of people aren't entirely aware of all the values that are alive in their organization. Which is kind of a great transition to today's topic, which is your book, The Compass Within. And maybe a good place to start is what inspired you to write this book?
So I have been helping people with personal core values for years, and it's something that I figured out on my own, and was just the everything in my life and leadership turned around when I got clarity on my core values and aligned to that. And then we started teaching this as part of leadership development at our company, and people would be like, wait, we're not doing company core value stuff. And they, and my answer was no, look, this is a leadership development program. And I think you need to understand yourself and how you lead. And great leaders lead from their values. And so when I wrote about core values and Elevate, people constantly ask me about them. They're like, okay, I'm in on like the spiritual capacity concept. I like it. The core values, how do I do it? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like I can't, I have this course I've been doing with my company, but after 5 or 6 classes of 10 people and realizing I had a process that helped people figure out real actionable core values, not platitudes.
Mm, yeah.
I turned it into a course. A couple thousand people took the course. They all told me this is great. This has helped me. It's changed my life, whatever. And so I really wanted to get that to more people and the framework. So I envisioned writing this book forever. But I literally had this vision of this book called like On Values in Barnes
Mm.
and Nobles that no one would pick up. They'd be like, I don't want to read a book on core values. I mean, most people like roll their eyes on it. And so I was really stumped on like how to get this to people until a combination of I read Patrick Lencioni's last book, and my daughter kind of was joking about me doing something hard. She's like, you should write fiction. And I was like, actually, like what if I kind of did this in a parable? What if I showed what I mean? And I got people to see it. And I think, there's so many eye rolling around the core value stuff, but when they read the book and they resonate with the character or I present it, they're like, oh, this is really different. I get that.
I love the origin story behind the book, Bob. That's great. And you mentioned Patrick Lencioni as well. I noticed that he also did an endorsement up front of the book, which I thought was pretty compelling because I know I bet you a lot of people on today's call are familiar with books like The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. So that's some pretty high praise.
Yeah, and he was super helpful. He read it for me. He was sort of my muse, and also he helped me with the title. So I owe a lot to Patrick. Bob Berg, who also wrote another one, super popular parable called The Go-Giver. Bob was helpful. I was kind of embarrassed to send it to him, and he's like, "I love this," and he's been telling everyone about it. So that felt really good.
That's awesome. But yeah, great feedback from outside. Um, and just at a high level, like what is this book about and who should be reading it?
Anyone. This book is cure for all the problems in the world, and I say that jokingly, obviously, but I'm a little serious in that we are very tribal right now in the world. Everything is about team this and team that, and people are tribal when they're not clear about their values and don't feel confident standing in their decisions, and it's just
Mm,
easier to go with the flow. And so I see people making a lot of nonsensical decisions or just feeling like it. We live in a 24-hour fast moving thing, and it just feels like I just need to survive the 24 hours. I don't have to think about what comes after. And core values decisions are harder in the moment, but they age well. And so I think we're in a core values crisis. I think people don't actually even understand what they are. But that if you really do understand them and you start looking at your decisions, and the book talks about the big three, which is I think the most important decisions you make in life, which is your vocation or the place you choose to work, your partner, and then your community, which has a couple of different definitions. Like those have to be aligned with your values to not work. And ideally, while you'd move a few times, you don't want to make a bunch of those decisions over and over and over again so you got them wrong. So it follows a story of Jamie, who's kind of seems to have it all, a young 20-year-old, and he is something is kind of bothering him below the surface, and he connects with a mentor who helps him figure out his values, and he kind of revisits each of those decisions with his fiance, his community, and his job. And then at the end of the book, kind of like Lencioni would, the end, it tells you exactly what you saw, and it gives you this framework now that has been used by thousands of people that I've been had coaches reach out to me, people who've done core values work forever, and they're always frustrated that when you get to the what part, it's like, here's a keyword list of one word keywords and pick some of these. That is not like that's not how a company figures out its core values. That's not how a person. So just even having all those people say, oh, this process and this validator and all this stuff, it really is different. And I mean, I believed it, but I'm now seeing other people say that too.
Yeah, no, I think your approach is super unique. As you probably know, like I've had a chance to go through a bunch of like development courses,
Yeah.
and the framework you brought to the table is both unique and I think way better than anything else I've ever seen, which is so cool. And congratulations for putting it together. And it is also awesome to learn from a story. I suffer from some mild to extreme ADHD, but it
Yeah.
was just so nice to have a nice story to follow along with, and then to
It's
have it
short,
packaged.
right?
Yeah.
Most people have told me I read it in a day. I read it on the
Yeah.
flight home. It's not much more than an hour and 15 minutes, like if you read through it.
Yeah. And I think people are going to really resonate with the story as well. There's these key moments where you're reading about the character Jamie, but you can really see yourself in Jamie's shoes, which maybe is the whole point of a good
That,
story.
that was the thesis, but
Yeah.
everyone, what I hear from everyone is like, I had that moment. Like Jamie
Yep.
is a vehicle for them to look
Yep.
in the mirror. They're like, I had that moment with a boss. I had that moment with a partner. Like that. What did somebody even told me?
Yeah.
Oh, you remember at the end, I tell a story, an actual story, not the book, about this moment with my son where I didn't trust these other parents. Someone called
Mhm.
me and they're like, I had that moment, and they described the whole moment to me, and I was like, oh, I even forgot that was in there. So yeah, it is. I think it's kind of a show, not tell. And you realize, oh, this is values, and this is why I felt this way at times, and this is why that decision didn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I love it. So a few moments ago, you're talking about how the world's kind of going through a bit of a core value crisis. I totally agree, to be frank.
Yeah,
And I think that's a great lead into the next question, which is you're kind of describing how core values are the missing piece for great leadership. Like what leadership advantages do core
yeah.
value clarity unlock?
So every company, and I don't have when I do a presentation, I sort of show this thing a company gave me. These are our leadership standards.
Yeah.
I was like, I have no problem with these. They're look at how like a leader should act and show up. I was like, so this tells you how you want leaders to behave and show up at your company. But you cannot tell people how they are going to lead. They lead from their values. These are deep things that have been with us for a long time. All the data shows they're pretty foreign before we're 20. A lot of them are, not overuse this word, but they're kind of from trauma or negative experiences, and some are from positive experiences, and it's pretty baked in. So what I have found is that people are either showing up as leaders in the workplace, which knowledge of these values, in which case it's a huge asset and they are a self-aware level 5 leader,
Mhm.
or they're driving the car, or they're a student and the teacher has the wheel and the car is going all over the road and they don't understand why they're having these reactions. So I'll give you a great example because I think I've seen this in the workplace. So a leader who has some core value about trust, like a dominant core
Mhm.
value about trust and trusting relationships. If I
Mhm.
was doing that work with them and you said that and you said you're like core value is like people you can trust or whatever, I'd say, Jason, let me ask you. I'm not going to ask you what it was. But when you were a child, did you have a pretty bad violation of trust? I've seen positive examples of trust, but 99 out of 100, it's a negative. And they usually go a little ashen in the face or a little tear. I'm like, look, I don't know what it is. But understand that your default as a friend, as a spouse, as a leader is you sort people into trust or not trust. And I've seen this with people in these leadership roles. So if you know that, it can be really helpful. You can communicate it, right? You can say, hey, you're joining my team. So what? Let's step back. So as a trust leader, if people are 5 minutes late to a meeting, if they miss a deadline, if you have remote work and they can't be found in the afternoon, it strikes deep. Like this person can't be trusted. And what they do is they put the person on the penalty box, they lock it, and they don't say anything to them. So what that looks like is they just stop trusting them, they stop giving them assignments, and they kind of drop them to the side. And they have no language to know that how they're doing this. And I've heard HR person describe it to me when they realized it afterwards, like, I didn't know what was going on with this leader. Like this quarter, they want to promote these people. The next quarter, they're putting them on a PIP, and like it flips around. Now, someone who knew this would kind of show up and say, hey, Jason, I'm Bob, I'm your new leader, and I just want to let you know, like the team, like trust is really important to me as a leader, and it's important that we have it. And here are the ways you can lose it: coming late to meetings, missing deadlines, I can't find you. And I'm someone for whom, when trust is broken, it's really hard to get back. So if I seem aloof or distant, or you kind of feel like you're on the outside, we've probably had a breakdown in trust, and you should come talk to me. Huge difference between those two things and how their team works. And in fact, when most of the people on our team have figured out their personal core values, they've gone back to their teams and like given them a presentation. They're like, I kind of want to, I have clarity on me now, so I want to tell you about it. Like, here are my red lines. Here's what I like. They're like giving them the playbook to how to manage up to them.
Yeah, I love it. There's so many good nuggets in there, Bob. First, like you actually tapped into an example of trust. Is that a core value that you've heard quite a bit? And I bet I suspect it might pop up for a number of people. And even on the call today, feel free if you want to comment in the chat window where trust is an important value to you. But does that come up a lot in your
Yeah,
experience?
we're working on Mick on my team and I are working on what we call the kind of core value genome project. Like, we found
Mm,
like they're all a little different, and the actual wording is really important. I was
yeah.
doing a workshop for a company's offsite yesterday down in Charleston, and I was really like kind of arguing with this guy or pushing him because he said integrity. And I was like, is it more important that people tell you the truth, or do their words and their actions have to match? Because there is a difference. And he had a real, when I pushed him, he had a spark play. Like, what really bothers him is when people say one thing and do another. Now,
Yeah.
that's a little different than just telling the truth, because a lot of people don't want to be around liars. But some people can deal with liars as long as they know they're liars, right? Like they know what to expect. What really bothers them, and when people say, this guy's in finance. And I said, so if someone says checks in the mail and it doesn't come, like, they're dead to you, right? So the nuances matter. But yes, trust is a theme that comes up a lot. It is almost always a result of a negative experience. And it can be, look, trust is a great thing in leadership if you realize that it's your default mechanism. But let me give you an example of there was a leader where they brought in a vendor that they had worked before on a project. And so they didn't really vet the project because they trusted them. And this was a
Mm,
huge project and it was a disaster. So again, they don't kind of realize that that is, without the knowledge of that, it's clouding how they manage and lead.
got it. Yeah. Um, Yeah, no, good insights. I loved how you started off with trust, and I loved how you also anchored to it as a way to share your red lines and as a guidebook with the team around you, right? So, because
Yeah.
it's funny when I think of core values, I always think of positive things, right? Going to the right place. But I guess there's an inverse to a lot of core values where if they're broken, there's the you go into the black or in the
Well,
red.
let me. That's a really important point. Um, Pain and purpose lie very close together.
Mm,
And
yeah,
so a lot of the things that we do and that we're really good at and that like are super positive in our lives come because of pain.
yeah,
Being a trusting person is not a bad thing, right? Being a person who operates on trust and not realizing it has a lot of blind spots. So I would tell you half the amazing things that see people do are going 180 degree of, they were lonely, so they create community.
yeah,
Rebecca just said build meaningful relationships. If I was putting her on the spot and we were talking about this, Rebecca either probably came from a huge big family or grew up on a kibbutz or something like that, or she grew up lonely. Like, I've it's always the case. I've had these conversations a thousand times, and when you
yeah,
ask someone which one was it, someone yesterday, they had a big core value of be reliable and reliability. And I
yeah,
said to them, so what, did you have a super, no. And they grew up in a house of chaos, right?
yeah.
And so it just became really important to them that people were reliable. We're not getting into therapy and blame and going back and on the couch, but like, you got to understand where it comes from, because you, as a 30, 40, or 50-year-old, 20-year-old in the workplace, like, this is showing up daily in your leadership. So if you got to understand why it matters and where it comes from. I don't think you're going to change it. And in fact, I think weaknesses are just strengths overused.
Yeah.
You and I have a lot of the same kind of values and qualities. And I would guess, like idea people and better way people and stuff. And we exhaust ourselves. And if we try to, I would say, if I try to make everything better, I won't make anything better, right? So any strength can be a weakness if overused.
Yeah, awesome, awesome context. Thank you, Bob. And I also think that's a good kind of natural progression to
Yeah.
this next question here, which is, can you share some examples of how leaders can lean on core values to make difficult decisions? And if you have stories around this, I'd love to hear them as well.
Yeah, story I'll tell tomorrow to a group of CFOs because I know they're going to be looking for the data on this.
Yeah.
Is It was about 10 years ago. There was the shooting at the high school in Florida, and it was made known that the shooter bought a gun from Dick's Sporting Goods. Now, interestingly, he did not buy the gun that he used in that shooting. But when the CEO of Dick's found out about it, he was really disturbed. And basically, they made a decision to stop selling initially automatic firearms and to people under 21, and eventually all guns. And what was interesting was when they asked him, and the projections were it was Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School where the horrible shooting was. And when they asked him, why, the projection was to lose $250 million. And when they asked him, why did you make that decision? He didn't even use a company core value. He used a personal family core
Mm.
value that said, you have to do right by and be involved in the community. Since they made that decision, the S&P 500 is up 126%. Dick's Sporting Goods stock is up 600%. It is not because of that, but it's certainly not hurt them. And this is pretty much true for everything I've seen. I don't have the graph I can show you of core values decisions. When you make a decision that goes against your core values, it's usually easy in the short term and
Yeah.
credibility is high. And then as you have to live with it and the repercussions and everything, credibility tends to like decline over time because now like all the implications come in. The reverse is true. When you make a core value decision that's really hard or difficult, there isn't the easy or obvious one in the short term. Like, oh, someone could say you could be overreact. We sell a lot of guns. It wasn't even our store. But when you make it actually like it looks better after a week and after a month and after a year, and credibility compounds because people also look and they're like, look, you made that when it was hard. You made that when it went the other direction. I have three or four other case studies of these, but we could take up the whole time talking about this. But core values decisions are hard in the moment. That if they were, you don't get credit when the river and your value are going in the same direction. That's easy, right? That's doing the thing that's easy.
Yeah, it's funny, and I'm gonna anchor into something you said earlier on that the world's in a bit of a core value crisis right now because it feels like there's so much like with social media, there's so much attention on the short-term decision. It would
Right.
be easy to take the easy, sorry, it would be easy to make the quick decision to take the easy way out, to not necessarily follow your core values.
Yeah.
But like, sorry, in summary, it's probably harder than ever to make these core value decisions. But you're right, like,
Let me give you an example. It might be slightly controversial, but I think
yeah,
it's
please.
important. So after the George Floyd crisis, right, and there
Mm,
was a lot of social media pressure. Let's say someone had a core value of take your time and think it through, right? There was like a real push for immediacy
yeah,
in that. And you remember that it was like a black square. Everyone had to post a black
yeah,
square that night, and like our organization did not post one. And I was like, I'm not sure what it helps. I don't know how to. Now, 2 days later, it turns out that actually did more harm than good. It blocked out other posts. It kind of took over. Like it was total virtual signaling, and it didn't do any good. But everyone felt like they had to do it because
yeah,
everyone else was doing it,
yeah.
right? And I think that's sometimes when people have to lean in and say, "Look, we have a value of think it through. Or I have a value like let's." Take a deep breath and decide, what we want to do here. But I remember hearing the next day that it actually caused more harm than good.
Yeah, no, I think that's a well, sorry, great story. It's funny, I got into a debate about that topic with my wife, not related specifically to that, which is not related to
Yeah.
that exact topic, but about when is protesting good and when is protesting bad, and there is good instances and bad instances, and I love the idea of slowing it down to think it through.
Yeah, someone told me their core value actually last week was go slow to go fast, right? And so that's a like that to me is a very definitive value.
Awesome. Yeah. So we've started kind of talking a bit about we started off talking about personal values and we're kind of stepping into the company
Or
value
yeah.
side of things now. So yeah, so shifting to company values, what is the key distinction between personal values for a leader and company values?
Yeah. So the personal, if I could draw a chart, in the personal values, you're at the middle. So you're the bubble, and then there are these out bubbles that represent the orbiting, like if it's like the sun and the moon, about these values orbiting around you, they are all about you. In the company, the values sit in the middle and the people are on the outside, right? And they represent the sort of what are the things that we have agreed to? What are the behaviors and norms that we have all agreed to at a team that we are going to, take these things seriously? And so, one of the important things to understand is that like values are never going to be in perfect unison, right? Your personal values and the company are not going to be in unison, but they need to be in harmony.
Yeah.
And they can't be antithesis. So
Yeah.
if you're a go slow person and the company is go fast, and you're a live for today and the company is plan for tomorrow, and this is the same thing in a relationship,
Yeah.
like that's really hard. You can have, I always say, and this is true, I think, for two team lead, like a leader and a boss, you can have points of friction. Like you can have these things called danger zones. My wife and I have a clear one core value danger zone. I am better way and she is right way. And we have learned
That's it.
how to dance around that one. But on all the other ones, we are in unison. If you have a boss, if you have a partner, if you have a company where you wake up every day and it's like opposite magnets, yeah, it could work, but how draining is that? I mean, that's it's kind of like trying to run Mac OS on PC hardware every day. So I think this is the sort of antithesis, unison, harmony is important because I think some people think it has to be unison. That's actually almost probably everyone's too similar. But I do believe that a couple of years ago there was sort of pushback around core value fit. I know this was some semantics and people were saying, no, I don't believe that anyone who talks about core value fit believes that you're looking for all homogeneous people, right? Like that's obviously no one wants that in an organization. So fit versus add, like I don't know. I got into semantics, but I, you have to in any organization have a few basic tenets that you agree on are non-negotiable, whatever the organization it is, because that's the only thing that's going to bring you together. I use this example in the book, but like if you've got a really good friend that's an atheist, like great, like that's obviously you can, and you're very religious, but you don't want the atheists in your like religious study group on Sunday morning. It's going to be like, guys, this religion thing, I'm going to bring it up again. I'm just not sure about it, right? Like in the context of that group, like the core one that does not work from a core value standpoint. So we can't pretend that we can bring together a whole bunch of strangers and have nothing that we hold as absolute and think that like that we have the glue to hold those organizations together.
Yeah, no, awesome, awesome examples, and even like the metaphor of operating systems. Like when you think about your personal operating system and somebody, the company operating system, I like the idea they don't have to be perfectly aligned, but there should be general, like some alignment. A couple of years ago, we had a gentleman on our team, great dude, really liked him. Came from the engineering side of things, and there's just struggle after struggle. And one day we had this really great heart to heart. I was like, listen, I've noticed there's this misalignment here. I'm like, there's a way the entire company does everything. And then there's a way you do things. And I'm like, so we have two choices. Either you can
Yeah.
change to fit the company, and it's a core value type of change,
Yeah.
or the whole company can change to fit you, and like, which probably isn't a realistic decision. And I'm like, why don't you take that away and think about it, and we'll pick this up next week to see where we want to go next. And his takeaway was he took it away and he came back and he's like, listen, with all respect, really like the people in the organization, but he's like, there's
I don't want to
misalignment.
change. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I don't want to change. And I'm like,
Yeah.
totally
You,
respect that.
well,
Yeah.
people don't change for the most part. So I think that's this came up on a webinar last week, coming to a Friday forward near you in 2 days. But what I realized was someone asked on that call, and this is interesting for HR professionals, like how do I determine between a performance and a core value problem?
Yeah.
And I kind of thought about it. I was listening to another answer, and then it just totally clicked for me. And this may be that story. And I said, performance problems are what problems, and core value problems are how problems,
Yeah. Well
right?
said.
So, like what they're doing, they're not meeting their sales goals, they're not connecting with the customer, their product's not working, something like that, right? These are objective things that you could say they're doing well or not doing well in their job. How is Jason's showing up late to meetings. He's really not respectful for people. He just refuses to follow up. And our culture is about, following up in 24 hours. Like it is all the behavioral things that sit outside the job responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Awesome, Bob. Um, so I'm gonna blend a couple of things that I love, personal core values, and recognition now. From your experience, Bob, what are some ways organizations can use rewards and recognition to reinforce their core values?
Yeah, I mean, not to be a commercial for Bucketlist, but we would always say like, what look, we trained a puppy the last couple months, and in doing that, it's here's a treat and here's a bad girl, right? Like these are humans follow
Yeah.
these behaviors. Culture is you reward certain behaviors and they're the incentives to follow them. That is the simplest definition of culture. So if you want certain behaviors in your culture, you need to reward them. And there's both implicitly and explicitly. And implicitly is calling out core value awards and shout outs and, using explicitly, right? Implicitly, is usually where people run into problems, and it's a little bit different because they're like, look, we reward outcome, we believe in outcomes, but then you're clearly rewarding working at the desk for 12 hours a day. So companies I've seen that have those shout outs, where the words are used all the time, they're used in performance management. My friend has a company we did similar shout outs, and I love rewarding people for living the core. That just makes the most direct
Yeah.
sense. I have a friend who has an amazing company in Canada, great culture. They have a baton with all the core values on it. Each month, one employee gives it to another. There's like a ceremony. They get stuff, and then their orange is their company theme. And then there's a parking space that's painted for this person. So clearly, the company is making it clear that those are the behaviors that they value. There's no question. This isn't most often the core values on the wall are complete wall art, and the actual values are what you can tell people are reward. They're rewarding heroes hours or taking excessive risk. We all know the story that when Enron went under, their core values were respect and integrity and kindness and all things that didn't get you promoted at Enron.
Yeah. No, yeah, great examples, and obviously, this is kind of near and dear to my heart, and we've just like you, we've seen time and again the power of like if you recognize an employee for living a value, everybody else is watching that employee, and they're thinking to themselves, I want a story told about me too. Like people learn through modeling, and recognition is a great way to draw people's attention to the behaviors they should model, and it applies at work, it applies as a parent, and you
It's
mentioned
all it's all culture is in anywhere in the
100%,
world.
man.
Like
Yeah.
humans, we've acted the same way for tens and thousands of
Yep.
years, and we
Yep.
respond to things that are rewarded by the tribe, right? Basically, at the end of the day, and that is literally where tribalism comes from, in some way,
Yeah.
where to
And
being thrown out of the tribe.
yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and then what is the effect on culture and retention when leaders really align a company to their core values? Like what are some of the cool stories you've seen and heard from your point of view?
Well, interestingly, as they align to the core values, retention can suffer dramatically from what I've seen. I was part of a program, you probably know a lot of people who went through it called EMP, that's part
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
EO. And the whole joke was there would be all this company core value work the first year. And the joke was that like, the first year of EMP was responsible for like a decline in employment, at hundreds of companies. Because what happened was the founders would go back, they would realize they didn't have core values. They would set like really strong core values, and inevitably they'd realize, or the people would realize, that half the people didn't want that or weren't aligned to that. So, you're going to have a shift either way. There's usually the gap when we do consulting projects for companies and kind of dive into their core values. We have a process. First of all, people are so skeptical, the
Yeah.
employees, because
Yeah.
I see the garbage like I saw in this email. These consultants come in and tell people what their values are and their one words. And I always tell everyone, we are not telling you anything about your company. We're going to do a lot of interviews and we're going to extract all that information and as scaffolding and we're going to give it back to you. So when we do those interviews, we're looking for two things, what I call the say do gap. So what is the company saying that it's not doing? And that's a
Mhm.
leadership problem. People are like,
Yeah.
actually, I like that value a lot and
Yeah.
whatever, but like
Yeah.
it's totally not real and upheld or whatever. So they got to put some teeth around that. But there's also things that people are doing or really value in the behavior that haven't been elevated to a value or made explicit. And they're like, what I really love is people that put the team first. And that's really not anywhere. Like, how do we
Yeah.
make that? But so you can get them right, but what happens is the implementation, right? And sometimes we talk about these 6 points of implementation. You need behavioral based questions for hiring. You need the core values in performance management. You need the shout outs and the rewards and the recognitions. You need the lore, right? The stories. I'm
Yeah.
sure you tell the
Yeah.
core value stories that have been told for kind of 10 years. And when you start to do that stuff and people say, "Oh, these are actually the behaviors that people want," then it will shift. And like I said, sometimes that means like you've reinforced one set of people and the other set of people clearly realize that like they're not going to be getting away with a lot of stuff that they were doing before.
Yeah. Sorry, great story. And I loved how you connected it to EMP. But I'm guessing like those CEOs, you come back, you roll out these new values or these leadership teams, they roll out these values. And although there might be some churn, like you're probably going to start seeing the right type of behaviors. Like, and gotta be so
Well, they
gratifying.
felt authentic because they were, this
Yeah.
is what I want. This is who I am. I want a company that does these things, and I want people who want to be here and do that. And so that story isn't about firing people. I think the people just
Yeah.
decided, oh, like now I look, companies are way too much trying to be everything to everyone. I always said that our core values at Acceleration Partners and the type of business that we were in meant we were right for about 2% of the people. And our
Mhm.
job was to find the 2% of the people. We under like you should offend some people. Like we move fast and break things. Like to some people that is offensive, right? They go slow and they're careful, right? And so they know if they see that all over glass door, they should know do not apply to our company, right? This is not this is so clear for people if they have college age kids and they go look at universities, right? We'll go Canada on this, like a downtown Montreal, McGill, big university has a very different value proposition than a small liberal arts university, that's in the woods somewhere. The difference between, and they're both great schools for the right person. The
Yeah.
difference between those schools and a company's is they don't try to say something that they're not. They don't try to say we cater to the kid who wants the big city and like no, they go no, we're a liberal arts school in the woods for people who want a chiller environment, or whatever their kind of values you line up to be. And I'm sorry, I don't know my smaller Canadian universities. I know the big ones, but like colleges are really good at saying we are who we are, and both kids could love each of those schools, but they would probably hate the opposite one, right? I just find that all the problem with all the platitude stuff is it just doesn't mean anything to anyone. And what you're trying to do is signal to the right people and try to signal away from the wrong people.
Yeah. And how might one know that they have the wrong core values in your organization or have too many values? Like do you have some loose guardrails you might want to share with
I,
the listeners
Less
today?
is more. I've actually
More.
kind of fallen in love, and I have five personal ones, but I've kind of fallen in love with an of three everywhere. Three goals,
Yeah.
three core values. There's some mathematical, stuff around this. I would rather see a company have three or four good ones, and you tell me that 95% of the people that have worked there over 30 days know what they are and don't need an acronym or a card or to look up at the wall. They've heard it enough. They saw the shout outs, on the Bucketlist channel, and so they know what they are. So I think that less is more. And then when people get into this, when you think about it, when they get into this acronym stuff, they end up creating the same amount of core values as they need for the letter of the word. Like this is why employees. I tried to tell this CEO rolled this thing out, and I was like, I know you mean well. But this is why employees roll their eyes at this stuff. And
Yeah.
they've just seen it before and they believe it's garbage. So even if you don't think it's garbage, and even if you put $100,000 of work into this and whatever, if you ended up with an acronym that says partner with all one word things, we are performance and acrimony, and I don't know, reliable. Like people are going to roll their eyes and not actually believe that anything's going to change.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. And for you mentioned earlier that you're presenting to a room of CFOs in the next day or two, or the next short period of time. And I know there's probably some analytical people in our audience today.
Yeah.
Can you share a story where connecting values to culture really drove measurable results?
I mean, I could tell you a story, but there's actually some data that's pretty interesting too,
Yeah, awesome.
that might be helpful to share. So, the NIH in the US was the National Institute of Health said that people with high value congruence, and who live by their core values have 30% higher life satisfaction.
Wow.
UCLA did a study and said people with articulated personal values have fewer regrets and greater decisiveness in high pressure situation. They're 35% more likely to make confident decisions. It would kind of go hand in hand that if you make more confident decisions, you have less regrets, right? We talked earlier about how some of these decisions don't age well. I think
Hmm.
those are like the peer pressure, do the easy thing to get through today ones. Uh, and this one's interesting. We look, we have a burnout and anxiety crisis going on. I think, and anyone in HR would probably admit to that. People whose daily actions reflect their values show 30 to 40% lower rates of anxiety, depression, and burnout, according to the American Psychological Association. That's on par with some pretty strong pharmaceuticals. And my last and favorite one is leaders who talk about and live by their values are perceived as three times more trustworthy by their teams.
Wow.
The
Wow.
the inverse, I don't have the data on, but I bet if you talk about values and don't live by them, you're probably 80% less trusted by your team.
Yeah.
So my thing is always like, if I told you there was a way to get three times more trust, 30% more confident decision making, less burnout, better, you'd be like, I mean, is this McKinsey? Is this going to cost me $1 million? And it's not. It's even when people understand their values, I think even without switching jobs, they can look at the different opportunities and tasks or things to do and be like, you know what, I'm going to include all perspectives person, or I'm a build community person. I'd actually like to start the group. I'd like to start the ERG, right? Like that, like that aligns with my, and then they realize, oh, this stuff like totally fills me because it's connected to what I like to do.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Bob, that's so good. The idea of being happier, more productive, more having higher trust with teams should resonate, I think, with all listeners. And it reminded me of something I saw a while ago. I read this article. It was about a nurse working in a palliative care home. And
Yeah, I know
you've heard this
I
stat,
know this
right?
one. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, they had the chance to talk to a bunch of people at end of life, and what were their life's biggest regrets, or what were the things they wish they'd done better. And one of them, well, a couple of them were funny. Well, one was to work less. Another was to be themselves and to speak more freely,
Yeah.
which is a fancy way of saying exactly what you've been saying the entire session today, which is to be themselves, to live in alignment with their core values. And and you have great stats, but like this is like one of life's most common regrets,
Yeah.
right? So
You know what the biggest regret in life was from that study?
tell me.
It's always things that we don't do. The only things people
Yeah.
regretted was bullying, which was interesting, like mostly. The biggest regret in life was having not gone abroad.
Oh, wild. Okay. So there's gonna be lots of good takeaways from today, but
Yeah.
hopefully everybody's filing for some good travel leave coming up here.
I
Um,
just saw someone ask a kind of question in the chat about someone start to convince them. Look, the book is a story. I'm not here to sell the book. The book is a story to get in the process. There's a whole process in that book. That process starts with answering 6 questions. So I give you a link. Like those are the 6 questions there, and there's a video of me doing it. If you answer those 6 questions with a cup of coffee for a half an hour and look down on the paper, you might be surprised at what some of the things come out. But if you're trying to help someone else do this, whether it's a family member or a colleague, The book is like if you handed them a manual on values, they're gonna dump their coffee on you. Like again, the book is meant to be like, hey, just read this story and see if you get anything out of it. But the 6 questions are right there for anyone who wants them.
That's a great resource. I have somebody, a relative of mine, who I'm going to be sending that link to and buying the book for. I know you said up front that you're not here to sell books, but I would just say to everybody who's on today's call, like go pick up a copy of this. It's available on Audible as well as a hard copy. But they're both fantastic.